David Radcliff, I can see you. Yeah. Pretty tough competition. Yeah, I don't know how we can compete with that. Okay, we're ready to start. If only we had a guest speaker. Has anybody seen David Radcliff? Yeah, could you drag him in? That might be the easiest way. He lead him in. Delora, I think it's your husband who's preventing him from getting in. Tell Gene to haul him in. I know, he's hard to keep track of. Okay, a rousing round of applause that David Radcliff has shown up. He's made another appearance. We're being graced with, although he and Gene are still deep in conversation, so it'll still be a few minutes. Oh man, if that's what you guys are talking about, we won't get started for another 5 hours. That's a long subject. I'm confident that almost all of us, if not every single one of us, already know this guy, and you've already heard a wonderful sermon. I don't think there's any reason for me to take any more of our time with any word of introduction. All I'm going to say is that David has some slides that he wants to present, and he will have some interesting comments on those slides. And when he's concluded the presentation of the slides, there'll be some time for question and answer. Jim Chenworth and I will roam around with microphones, and David will be able to address each one of those questions as time permits. So with that, if Zach is ready with the slides, we're ready to go here.
Good. Thank you, Tim. Well, and I know some of you were at an event that I spoke at last spring around some of the program updates. Well, I tried to bring new stuff for you today, because I know some of you are repeat customers. And so I'm trying to bring some things that have happened to us in a new community project since I saw you last. I know some of you weren't here for that, so there's some things that'll, I think, hopefully still be interesting to you. And you don't have to watch the previous show in the series to understand what we're going to talk about today. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else I want to say. I already said everything I want to say up there, and so this is show and tell. This is going to be show and tell, so that's what I have in mind. So I'm going to stand kind of like this so I can see too, and here we go. We're going to spend a little time in Alaska, and this is about climate change impacts, essentially. I've got a few framing pictures to show you, but about climate impacts. There's Denali, highest mountain in North America. We actually saw it 6 days the last time we were up there, which, it's a little mystifying. It's playing hide and seek, but we were there long enough, plus it was just our lucky week, I guess, or something like that. So we camped back in the campground. You might have seen this. All the lights could go off. That would be okay with me, if that's a possibility. Some of you have probably seen this picture before, but we encountered a grizzly bear and her cubs on the way back to our campsite a couple of years ago. Then she charged the bus. It's a bluff charge, which you know. And then, they come running at you, and you're supposed to stand there and look big and talk commandingly but not threateningly if you meet them in the wild. Personally, I'm going to be screaming and running. But if you scream and run, you're prey, and then you better pray. Yeah, Tina's been there. All right, so we see big things, big things. And part of the reason we go there is to show that we're not the biggest kids on the block. Well, I thought Bob Etzwaler, some of you know Bob Etzwaler, and I went there on a scouting trip about 20 years ago to Denali after being up to Arctic Village, which you're going to go to here in a second. And I was thinking, people want to come and see this, but maybe just one time we'll do a trip here because, there's no human rights issues. I wasn't quite aware of the progression of climate change at that point 20 years ago, and I thought, I'm not sure there's a point. But that trip has had such an impact on people. I think in terms of the community that we formed together, they have to eat my cooking on a 2-burner stove for 5 nights. That's going to bring you together. That's all I'm going to say. And so we're there together experiencing things. We're camping together, hiking together, and you're seeing this big stuff. Mountains, the streams, the animals, and all that. And it has a spiritual impact on people. That's what I found. And so we keep going back. Yeah. Okay. But Last summer, we always do a work project. I forget what yours was, Tina, but we always do a work project to give back to the park for a day. Last summer, we got to work in the dog sled kennels, hung out with the Huskies. It was actually really excellent experience. There's a couple of young women with our group last year. There's our group from last year, and some of you will know some of those people. Greg Lazakovich, Davison Lazakovich, is about the fourth person back on the right with his daughter just beside him. In the very back is Ed Paulsgrove and Brenda. Some of you know Ed and Brenda. So anyway, and you probably know some other people in that lineup too. Anyhow, we've been seeing permafrost melting for the first time. I mean, it's not melting for the first time, but the first time we've seen it melting on this hike we take every year. So an indication of climate change. The soil is warming up enough that now you have to go down 3 feet where you used to have to go down 6 inches to find the permanently frozen ground. Now you've got to go down 3 feet. And as permafrost melts, it releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. We see a big bull caribou every summer. Every summer we see a big bull caribou when we're up there on top of the mountain, and it's up there for all kinds of reasons. But one of them is it's grazing, the lichen. It eats the moss on the ground. In the wintertime, the ranger said they also eat the lichen, but they have to dig down through with the front part of their antler. They dig down through to get under the snow to get but now he says it's not staying below freezing in Alaska all winter long. And you get a freeze-thaw cycle, so you get a crust on top of the snow. And the caribou are having a hard time getting down through. We don't have a clue about how we're messing up the game for the rest of God's creation. And so part of our trip, one of the reasons for our trips is to help show some of that and kind of quantify it. Now, forest fires, 2,000 forest fires in America every day on average. Half of those in Alaska. And here's the deadly combination right here, the bark beetles. See all those dead trees in the foreground? Bark beetles. They're moving in, and climate change is supercharging them because the winters aren't cold enough to kill off the larvae anymore. Plus, the hotter it is, the hungrier they get, these bark beetles. And the pine trees, the evergreen trees up there, they put defensive mechanism into their sap. But when it's hot and dry, they can't create that. So their defenses, it's like their force fields are down. And the bark beetles can sense if a tree's defenses are down. Don't ask me how this happens. If you want to know more about this, and a lot of you know more about this than I do, honestly, all the people in this room, but there's a book called Our Immense World. And these are all on our reading list on our website, but it's called Our Immense World. And this guy, Ed Young or something like that, tells about all the different sensory capacities that creatures have that we don't really have any idea about. And it's amazing, really, including this little story I just told you. We always go to see Exit Glacier. There is a little white patch above the people in the white jackets. And in 1926, it was right here. I'm going to show you another perspective on this same glacier. So when we were up there in 2003, our first learning tour to Alaska, we spend 5 nights in Denali. We go down to Seward for 2 nights and do a sea life experience, also visit this glacier. So there's the glacier, the same glacier from a different perspective in 2003. Last summer. One more time. Does this work backwards? Yes, it does. So just to give you an idea, 20 years worth of melt. They say, maybe I've got a picture of Greenland. I'm going to save that comment in case I've got a picture of Greenland. I think I do. But of course, land-based glaciers are the main source of sea level rise, melting. When they melt, it's the main source of sea level rise. Oh, wow, I've got a sequence here. There's 2005 was down to the left here somewhere. That's 2016, 2019, 2021, 2023. So, it pays to keep going back places. You deepen your understanding of things. You see things chronicled over time. Same with the human visits we make around the world. You see the changes over time and learn from what's going on. Same thing with the environmental things. Oh, the American pika. I don't want to. Okay, it's getting warmer. They have a problem. They've got a thick fur and internal thermostat. The ranger down in Canyonlands National Park actually told us a couple years ago that if it regularly gets over 78 degrees, the pika tend to explode. That was the verb he used. I think he means their blood boils. So they're having to move up in altitude. So again, the way we're changing the game for everything, let's see if I have Greenland in here. No, I don't have Greenland. I might have Greenland after these pictures. So we go up to Arctic Village. Way up north, these are Gwich'in people. They don't usually dress like this. They usually dress like your high school friends, kids, grandkids, but in special occasions, yes. We're flying up there a couple of years ago. This is the smoke from the forest fires. We were up there one summer. 3 million acres had already burned in Alaska. But this is happening every summer, of course, now. Forest fires are a huge problem. In fact, at Camp Mac, last summer, or was it maybe, no, whenever the Canadian wildfires were really in vogue, they had to, keep all the kids indoors for a couple of days at Camp Mac. They were telling us when we were there a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, there's the village, Arctic village, 200 people, Gwich'in by birth, Episcopal by baptism, Caribou by culture. About 200 souls. And there's the Brooks Range in the background there with a little dusting of snow to welcome us. A beautiful, pristine area. There's my buddy Charlie Swaney, who guides us when we're there, outdoorsman, hunter. The subsistence culture, really one of the last subsistence lifestyles in North America. I mean, they also, they bring in some stuff from Fairbanks, but it's very expensive by the time you fly it up there and then sell it in a little convenience store there in town. So a lot of their food comes from the land around them. Migratory animals, the caribou, migrate by the Gwich'in communities, and they hunt them as they pass by, which I was telling the story about a moment ago. Sarah James, a spokeswoman for the Gwich'in, she says, you want to go and drill for oil up on the coastal plain. That's where the caribou go to give birth and then migrate back in the fall. She says, we're caribou people. Even if we're starving, we won't go up there to hunt because we consider it the sacred place where life began. You guys have been there. You all have been there. Anyway, she said, you'll go up there for 6 months worth of oil. So, we have to wonder, is anything off limits to us if we really feel like we need it? I just heard a thing on National Public Radio yesterday, interviewing about someone from the Congo and all the chaos that's going on in the coltan producing regions of Congo, which is coltan's that thing we need in all of our batteries for our electronic stuff. And the nastiness that's going on in the coltan producing region because it's sort of a lawless frontier based on our consumer demands, really. Anyway, things, that stuff. All right, so the permafrost is melting up there too, and you see trees falling into the drink. And of course, as the banks are eroding because the permafrost is melting, and the rivers are getting shallower and wider and warmer, and fish cannot live in warm water. The more hotter the water is, the less oxygen it holds. I read some scientific reason for that somewhere, which I can't explain to you, and I probably can't explain it to myself. But anyway, you have fish kills. 2 summers ago, we were up there the last time. At some points, some rivers were 70 degrees, and salmon cannot live in that. And so you find this going on. So here's a picture from 2002, the first time we were up there. We're actually camping up at their hunting camp. So when the caribou are migrating by, the Gwich'in set up their camps up on the mountainside, and then they can hunt them as they pass. They could get the meat prepared and take it down to the village on four-wheelers. They used to make the women pull the sleds, but those days are gone. Anyway, so there's 20 years ago. Look at the tundra. Look at the flat, barren, pretty much tundra. Here's 10 years ago. We were up on that same mountainside, same spot, camping. Look at the tundra. Look at the bushes coming on. Here is summer before last. So you're seeing all three things. Amelta is melting, burning, and growing. The tree line, there's a great book called Tree Line, actually. It's one of the best books you can read just on general environmental topics, but it's about the tree lines marching northward and how it used to vacillate a few centimeters a century around the Arctic Circle. Now it's marching northward at hundreds of feet per year. And of course, this is going to affect the caribou. They don't want to come through this, which will affect because they can't see the predators. And it'll affect the Gwich'in. I mean, they may have to relocate. Imagine, that's almost impossible. Now they've got schools and churches and roads and airstrip and all that stuff there. But it's just like every other thing that's being affected by climate in terms of migration. Think of Denali National Park. And what if it gets warm enough that the caribou want to migrate north? There's not protected land north other than state forests where hunters can kill them. And then the wolves will go because that's their prey. So all this. It's just coming back on us, as it should. It's our just deserts. Nature doesn't deserve it, and the people in Malawi don't deserve it because they're down to a meal a day because of climate change, but we deserve it because we're causing a problem. Bye-bye, Alaska. Seriously. Get up there while you can. All right, off to the Amazon. I have a few Amazon pictures for you. The Cuyabeno Ecological Reserve. That's our friend Delio. He's our guide for the last 20 years going to the Amazon rainforest. He's a Siona. That's his tribe. He's a shaman. That's his job. He's a medicine man. He said until 60 years ago, our people were nomadic, following the animals, following the seasons, Peru, Colombia, back to Ecuador. Then they discovered oil here. They pushed us back, they pushed us back, they pushed us back some more. Native people have had the misfortune of being in the way of stuff that we wanted. the outside European rulers, basically. But, and of course, other countries are getting into the game now, too. Oh, I put this one in because Kurt and Lena are back there. About 4/5 of the way back on the right side. There they are. We were with us a couple of years ago down there. For the first time last year, we saw a boa constrictor. I just put that up there for you. You can see it's a rainbow boa. It blends in very nice. The head's down on the left side there and then winding its way back through there. We actually saw 2 boas last summer, which I didn't know they lived in that part of the rainforest, honestly. And also, they've just discovered a new species of anaconda 30 miles from here in the Yasuni, which is another protected area where they also want to drill for oil. But Delio, who you met a moment ago, said a couple of springs ago, he told me when we were there, he said, I saw an anaconda that was 30 feet long. The new species is 30 feet long. I'm kind of wondering if Delio didn't discover this species, but just didn't realize it was a different species of anaconda. Anyway, I'm just a thought. We saw another anteater last summer. We only seen them about once every 10 years. And there's our second one, actually, that we've seen. Then sloths, it's been raining sloths on us. Pink dolphins, we see those every year. Come on. There we go. And night monkeys, cutest monkeys I've ever seen. They have to have the big retinal space because they're only dealing with starlight and moonlight. And this shows the value of leaving old growth in forests. We like to clear cut stuff. You know how we do. We like to clear cut stuff, but old growth is important for all kinds of reasons, which, you know, I'm sure you probably read Suzanne Simard's work, The Mother Tree, In Search of the Mother Tree or something like that, where he talked about the value of old trees, even in a clear-cut area, to leave the old trees as nourishment for the younger ones coming on could be economically more productive. But, you know, we don't like to listen to that kind of talk. Oh, so, sorry. We got a late start from one of our outings last year, and we ended up getting to the place we were staying late, and there we are in the canoe in the middle of the night with the full moon. Thankfully, it was not raining. But otherwise, it was a nice experience, even though we weren't where we should have been when we should have been there. But it turned out okay. We're working with a Shuar community. They used to be head shrinkers. In fact, this community is so young, they didn't know that history. And our guide reminded them that their people used to be head shrinkers when they lived in another part of Ecuador. Now, we turn them into tree planters. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't turn them into nothing. But we are working with them to restore forests around their community. So that's part of our response to what's going on down there. Here's Aurelio, Kofan shaman, giving Caroline the Jedi zone of protection, painting her up with those berries there. There's his grandson, Franklin, who's learning the trade of being a shaman. These shamans have such a tough, both in the Ecuador, but also up at the Gwich'in. They're having trouble with kids staying around long enough to want to learn the stuff to be a shaman and not being so distracted by social media. There's games to be played. It's a big issue for these native communities to find people young people who want to learn the good. But anyway, Franklin's learning the stuff. And then we're taking a hike with him last summer. He's showing us the thing for a toothache. The thing for a toothache. That's why he's got his hand up to his mouth. He's got the leaf in his left hand. I mean, they know the medicines. He's learning the medicine. Then he showed us an antiseptic that can be a coagulant. I had been in South Sudan 2 weeks before this trip. I had slipped and fallen down an embankment. I had a cut on my arm that hadn't healed. It was like right over here someplace. And it was still oozing, kind of. So he's showing us this plant. I said, Franklin, how about a little over here? So he came over, squeezed that plant, put a few drops on my wound. A couple of days later, it was all better. It was all better. It's amazing. Oh, anyway, so, I mean, yeah. There's the tree we're going to, the Sabo. If you saw the movie Avatar, this is the tree, the spirit tree. It's where they go to commune with the spirit world, called Sabo, C-E-I-B-O. Slash and burn, logging, cocoa plantations, palm oil in half the stuff in the grocery stores. And there's a palm oil plantation on one side of the road. Then last year, they cut down the forest on that side of the road and putting in palm oil over there. And our trade agreements do nothing about this stuff. The big picture thing here is that your trade agreements do nothing about this stuff. They can't inhibit the importation of something simply for ecological reasons. We have a hard enough stopping stuff coming in if there's child labor involved. With a million child laborers in the cocoa plantations in West Africa, and somehow we can't seem to do nothing about that, even with the Harkin Amendment, which is supposed to stop the importation of stuff made with child labor. Roads. 95% of deforestation happens within 3 miles of a road or a navigable river. That's why environmentalists will risk their lives standing in the way of a road being put into an area. They know what's coming next. Number one cause of deforestation, cattle production, and in the Amazon in general, mostly Brazil, but also some in Ecuador. And then the Chinese are involved there. That was one of their petroleum plants. What the Chinese did was, the Belt and Road Initiative around the world giving out loans. These aren't grants, these are loans to countries around the world to put in infrastructure. Well, in Ecuador, hydroelectric dams. Turns out it doesn't work that well. And they used all Chinese labor, pretty much. They imported their own labor force to build this thing. But Ecuador borrowed the money from China to build it, and now they got to pay them back in petroleum. So Ecuador has little incentive to really mind the store in terms of petroleum extraction policies, because they just want to get more oil in the process to pay off the Chinese for their loans. So you get these toxic waste ponds all through the rainforest. And our hands aren't clean either. United States gets 200,000 barrels of oil from Ecuador every day. It comes from the rainforest. This is what is left behind. Toxic waste, hundreds of these ponds. And that's why you and me and some of the rest of us ride our bikes as much as we can, because we see the damage that petroleum production leaves in its wake. So we met this guy a couple of years ago, Vittoriano, an ancient shaman. He's famous, we're not. But he agreed to meet us. Plus, he's Delio's uncle. After we'd been going for 6 or 7 years, he realized we weren't just a bunch of tourists. So he spent time with us. Welcomed us to his house up on stilts along the river, about 12 feet up. Greets us each warmly. Then he cuts to the chase. He said, we have to stop the petroleros, the oil companies. He said they're using dynamite, seismic testing to find the oil deposits, scares off the animals we hunt. He said we're getting diseases we never had before. He said we can't even drink the water out of the river anymore. It's too polluted. He said, I won't be with you much longer. But after I'm gone, I'll be with you in spirit. We must protect this place for the sake of the children, for the sake of the forest. With the Spirit's help and yours, we can do it. That's what he said. 25 of the most profound minutes of my life spent with this guy. So we go back to the place we're staying, go back to Quito, then another day or two, fly back home. Got an email a week later that he had died. So we were the last outsiders to meet him, and you might say hear his deathbed wish that the forest be saved. So I already showed you the Shuar picture. Never mind. I did this all last night late, okay? If we got a few duplicates in here, I'm sorry. But anyway, there's the Shuar working some reforestation, which I already told you about. Also, we're helping support Franklin get his shamanic training. These shamans are really the leaders, the spiritual leaders, the medicinal leaders, political leaders sometimes of their people. And they're on the front lines of defending this rainforest. And Franklin needed to travel away from home to get the training that he needed to follow in his grandfather's footsteps. And he's the breadwinner. So I raised with our network. Some people in this room may have donated. We raised money to help him get his shamanic training because we got to keep these guys in the game. So that's a big part of our work these days, not so much buying forest and some reforestation, but not too much in the Amazon, but mostly supporting the shamans and the leaders. Also, he had his canoe stolen during the recent insecurity down in Ecuador a couple of months ago. His canoe was stolen. And so, it's like not having a car in our culture. You got to have a canoe. So I did a campaign with our network, all the Ecuador alumni, and raised some money for the canoe. So there it is. You're the first Americans to see it. Yeah, you're the first people. My friend down there just sent me this picture yesterday. So there's the canoe. It's in Franklin's possession. Let's hope it stays that way. Oh, boy, Delio. All right, off we go to Nepal. I know I probably showed you some pictures from Nepal last year. I'm not going to show you many today. I did want to show you this, though. I think this is new for you. This is 10 years ago. This is Annapurna 1. We take a trek, an overnight trek, and go up for a vantage point of the Annapurna range. It looks like it's in your face. It's probably 100 miles away. I don't know, 26,000 feet or something. There's Annapurna 1 10 years ago. Look at the snowpack on the lower reaches. Come on. Last January. One more time. 10 years ago, look at the snow. 4 months ago. The Himalaya are melting fast. And 2 billion people in the valleys below depend on the dry season runoff from these mountaintop glaciers for their water supply. It's going to be a problem. Namaste. Pollution, young woman talked about pollution. I already talked to you, 2.3 years off our lives, 5 years off your life in South Asia. You can see why, flying into Kathmandu. We try to do our part not to create as much pollution as possible. We do a lot of mass transit, one way or another, when we're traveling. It says things. It says things to people that you're visiting. If you're all not getting, your own private vehicles and riding comfortably and all this stuff, it says something to the people you're visiting, that you're willing to kind of put it on the line and be a little more with them. We ride a lot of public buses. This is not a public bus. It's a van that we all crammed into. But we ride a lot of public buses. It says something about your way of operating. And that says something about the respect you get from people. We send young adults over to South Sudan. Some summers when there's not a war going on to volunteer. One summer, our volunteers there, the young adults, would walk back and forth from the place they're sleeping to their project sites, to the school, to the reforestation effort, whatever, they're walking. Some guy pulled one of our young women apart at one point and said, "We didn't know Kwanjas, white people, had feet that moved." Because every other outsider they've seen coming by them is in a Land Cruiser with the windows up and the air conditioning on, kicking up dust in their face. And so the fact that you're willing to do it like they have to do it says something about it. And plus, we want to save all the money we can on everything we do. So part of it, that's why we do the public buses, but it's also the experience and the street cred. The street cred it gives you with the people you're working with. Pooja, 13 years old, she and her mother carrying these bricks up the hill all day long. They told us between them they earn 75 cents. So young women have a tough time. So we work with an anti-trafficking organization, which I've told you about before, called Shakti Samuha. When we first started going there 15 years ago, working with Shakti, they were saying 10 to 12,000 girls a year were being trafficked into the sex trade. 10 to 12,000 per year into the sex trade. This last year, they told us, it's up to 30,000. Here's the new player: social media. They don't need to have somebody come into their village to recruit them, a trafficking person, or their auntie who's just trying to do them a favor by getting them an education in India or a job in India. Little does she know, maybe, that when she crosses the border, the girl's going into other hands. But in this case, the girl can find out this stuff for herself or fall in love with some guy online. Come to India for the marriage, ends up in the brothel. So some of the girls in the shelters of the organization we work with, they send them to school. One of the things we do is provide scholarships for these girls who have been trafficking survivors, and now they're trying to get back to school. So we provide scholarships for them. There's the shelter, which I told you about last spring, where they needed a wall around it because they're taking the traffickers to court, and the trafficking guys don't like this, or women. They don't like this. They come back and want to exact vengeance on the girls in this shelter or grab them again. So they needed a wall. I said, how much does it cost? Do I have another picture? Yeah, girls like this 8-year-old, they're getting their traffickers prosecuted with the help of Shakti Samuha. But of course, the traffickers don't like that. So they needed $30,700. So spring before last, we had the campaign. We raised $40,000. Spent the other 10 in Malawi because the girls there in a hostel that we had built for girls 50 miles from home were feeling insecure. Being so far from home and living kind of on the lam, you might say, in ramshackle homes and stuff. We built a hostel, but then they were feeling insecure, and we used the other 10,000 from this campaign to build a wall there in Malawi. I don't think I've got a picture of that for you. Anyway, there's the shelter wall that you may have contributed to. And then 2 years ago, we met these Chipang girls who were, after 5th grade, school was over for them. So that's Anissa on the right and Rukmani on the left, her teacher. We learned that when they graduated, I don't have that other picture in here. She and 4 of her classmates, when they graduated, their school was over for them because they couldn't afford the $200 per girl per year to go to school. They have to walk down the mountain, 7-hour round trip every day to get to school. But that wasn't their problem. They're willing to do that. The $200 was a sticking point. So I thought, there's 5 of them, $200 a girl, that's $1,000. I can raise that, and I did 2 springs ago. There they are as beaming 6th graders. Then 11 more graduated last spring. There they are, 16 of them now, and you got to do this for 5 years. $200 a girl per year for 5 years. Then 15 more are graduating this spring. I feel it's a compelling case, though. We've already raised a lot of money to keep these girls in school. I think we'll be able to raise it for the next 15, which 15 plus 16 is 31 girls. Next year, this coming year, we're going to have to be funding. I feel like we'll be able to do it. Then next year, I hear nobody's graduating. Whew. So, but anyway, I don't know. And these girls, if they're not in school, early marriage, 13 or 14 years of age, field work, day labor, or being trafficked. India's right next door. So, it just felt like something that we should get behind, and I felt like you got to almost think about marketing. It's pitiful. I mean, that's not pitiful. It's reality. You got to think, if you take on this and you don't really have money for it, are people going to come through for you? For them, not for us, for them. I just felt like this was a compelling story. And probably people would want to support these girls. Plus the 7-hour walk. Gee whiz. So we're meeting with the girls. They come to have lunch with us at the place we're staying in Chitwan, where the national park is. And as we were eating, they told one of our guides there, talking, in Nepali, we've never had rice this good. Now, all I know is the brown rice you get at Costco, or wherever. I don't know anything about this rice. But evidently there's grades of rice, and they get the clumpy, I don't know what kind of rice they're eating, but they're not. And then there's a buffet line that they were eating from, and there was a variety of vegetables, and they were saying to our guide, which one can we take? They had no idea there was a table anywhere with this much bounty. And earlier, we had asked them in a meeting, and this is not a picture from the meeting, but just a picture of them. We said, what do you want to do? Your favorite color, your name, and what do you idea you got for your career or your life, None of them had anything to say. And later, one of our guides talked to one of the girls in the buffet line, and the girl said to her, we've never known any woman in our community who's gone to school past 5th grade and done anything but get married and work in the fields. That's all we know here. So, you're cracking that door and wondering what's going to happen for these girls' future. Oh, and when it was all over, they came with gifts. They had 3 jars of local honey. And my Nepali friend said, this honey, it's very good and it's very expensive. And they gave us 3 jars. So we got the money, they got the honey. And everybody's got something to give. And that really is part of our approach. We don't want to come in as the big people with all the money and all that stuff and saying, oh, look all the good we're doing here. Well, we've got to give you. People have things to give. It may not be financial. It may be honey, actually. But, people want to give. It feels good to give. It's like Peter not wanting Jesus to wash his feet. We like to be the foot washers rather than the foot washee. And so here you've got to, open the space for people if they have things to offer you. It's humanizing. Okay, on we go. Oh, this woman, she got a mic. We also work with women. I don't have a lot of the women's pictures here for you today. I showed you last spring. But this woman we just met in January. Oh, I've got her name in my sermon notes. Okay, just a moment. Let me find this. I don't have all the names of everybody memorized, so I did write this one down somewhere. I've got it here, who she is. This is Meena Kumal. This is Meena Kumal, and her husband's been working in Dubai or somewhere for 2 years. She hasn't seen him, and he sends $200 or $300 a month home. The remittances, you know how that works. We gave her some funds to start this little shop where she's selling Buddhist funeral materials. I don't know what word to use, materials, items, accoutrement. I don't know what the Buddhist funeral stuff is, but she's selling it. And also, when we were introducing ourselves to her, every time we'd say one of our names, she would burst out laughing. She thought our names were so hilarious, which I just thought was cute. And there's Juanita, whose house I was staying in all the last half this last week in Iowa, in Waterloo, Iowa, Juanita Williams, someone in our network, and she put me up. She and her husband put me up. Anyway, and this woman, Kalpa Narumba, all these women are trafficking survivors. She'd survived trafficking. Now is working in a kitchen as a cook somewhere. And then she had a stroke last fall. The year before, Shakti had asked us for money for survivors' medical needs, like emergency needs that we all have, because they don't have a cushion, especially to be able to go to a private hospital. Because you get a serious problem, you need to get to a private hospital, not a public hospital in Nepal. I'm just telling you. So anyway, she had a stroke and didn't have the wherewithal to get to a public hospital and was getting treatment at the private hospital, and she was going down fast. Shakti gave her some of the money that we provided. I think we provided $1,000. 600 of it, I think, went for her to get admission to a private hospital and get the treatment she needed. She said, "You saved my life." I mean, I don't know. We just do what, and here's the thing. There's Charimaya Tamang, the founder of their organization, Shakti Simuha, the first woman to successfully prosecute the man who trafficked her 25 years ago. Anyway, she's the leader of their organization, and that's me. And we're having lunch with them on our last day there in Kathmandu this last January. She said to us, and well, to me and to our group, New Community Project is our dream partner. She said, you know, all the other groups we work with, they've got very strict limitations on what they can spend their money on. They got certain projects in certain communities they're going to fund, and that's how it is. And they sign one-year contracts. We don't know if they're going to be with us next year. She said, we know you're with us for the long haul, and if we have a certain need, a special need, like this medical fund, like that wall around the shelter, we can ask you, and at least you'll think about it. And if you can, you'll respond to it. And I want to tell you, coming from this woman and the work she won the Human Rights Award from Hillary Clinton one time. There's a picture in their office of her and Hillary. Hillary's not taller than many people. But there's Hillary there with her arm around Charimaya, like this. But, you know, to hear that sort of affirmation, you know, you go into these things and you don't know, as the person from outside with all the money and all the power culturally and all the other stuff we bring when we go to places, you don't know how you're being received. And for her to say something like that, it meant a lot, actually. Hard to get a bad picture of a zebra, I find. So I know we're going to South Sudan. Just a story I'm going to tell you about giraffe. How much time do I have, Tim? 11:30? Lots of time. Okay, so I just read this from one of the books I've been reading. The book is called, I think, The Hidden Life of Trees, by some guy from Scandinavia, I think. Anyway, he's talking about giraffe and the acacia. How the giraffe, you all may know all this. See, you people are so smart in this room and know about all this stuff. I'm sorry if I'm repeating everything you know. But anyway, he said giraffe eat the acacia. The acacia are not crazy about that. And they've learned over evolutionary history to put poison in their sap, like cyanide, actually. It can make a giraffe sick or kill them if they keep eating this leaf. And then the acacia put ethylene into the air. It blows downwind and warns the other acacia trees that the giraffe are in town, get your sap up. Well, the giraffe figured this out. Now they go upwind and do their grazing and browsing. Yeah, it's a jungle out there. All right, so South Sudan, which I've taken you to, I probably didn't take you there last year because we hadn't been there in a couple of years. But anyway, I want to tell you just quickly how we got started in South Sudan. Back in the years I was with the General Board of Church of the Brethren, I took some groups to South. I managed the Global Food Crisis Fund, and we had some work in South Sudan with girls' education, some food relief and stuff. And there's the woman on the right, Florence Bayoa, with the South Sudan Council of Churches that we worked with in those years. Well, the first time I went back there with New Community Project, we started in 2003. It was 2007 before we got there, and you were with us, and you must have been here at this photo moment, actually. Florence introduced us to Agnes Amaleto, who now is our partner. She had just started a little group called, what was she calling it back in those days? She called it something else now. She started a little organization, women's empowerment of some kind. Anyway, and she introduced us to Agnes, so it felt like I had an imprimatur of validity on this young woman who was starting this organization. Because you got to be careful who you work with in this world, just as they have to be careful with us, okay? It works both ways. But, you know, you can end up with the wrong partner and things go south. And so she introduced us, Florence, and that's how we got working in South Sudan with this little organization, and have been working with them since 2007. I just thought you might be interested. All our relationships came out in ways you know nobody would have anticipated. We don't have no 5-year plan. Things land in our lap, and if we got the capacity, and if I can trick the board into going along with it, yeah. So you know the conflict in South Sudan. In fact, the big conflict right now is in Sudan, which South Sudan split off from in 2011. But anyway, we support girls' education, which you know. School we built 10 years ago. This is a picture from last May. So since I was with you, we've been to South Sudan. We were there last May. There's the school we built 10 years ago. Currently, there's 700 and some girls going there. And we don't build schools. That's not part of our MO. But they said we need a boarding school for girls, because you know you get girls and boys together in the same school. 1 + 1 often equals 3. Yeah. So we built this school, and now 700 girls going there. We provide sanitary products. As much money as we give for scholarships, we give for hygienic materials for these girls. I would never have thought of that. But our friend said, we need this. These girls need this. So we're doing that. And then mosquito nets for malaria. We were there last May, and girls were sleeping off malaria. Kills 500,000 kids in Africa. By the way, malaria-carrying mosquitoes are expanding their range by 10 miles a year. They'll be knocking at our southern border, and no wall is going to keep them out. Anyway, they told us we need a clinic on site. Because, you got 700 girls. You can have, you got 700 anything there. You're going to have health issues variously. And you got to go to the hospital a couple miles away in downtown Nimalay. Well, they needed a clinic, especially for the malaria. 7 or 8 girls were getting it every week. We've provided some mosquito nets now, so hopefully that'll cut down. But it's still something that we don't have. We didn't, we give South Sudan, just for girls and women's programs, $90,000 to $100,000 a year, not to mention special projects that we come up with, like the school and other things. And like the clinic, I didn't have money. We felt like we were maxed out. And so I put out a wish list to our network around the country and said, here's some things still needed in South Sudan. You probably donated it to it, and you probably did too. Anyway, but wish list, and a church in Seattle closed. The Olympic View congregation closed recently because their numbers were diminishing so much. They moved into the retirement home, so look out, Timbercrest. Who knows who's going to be coming your way? But they moved into the retirement home that they built about 30 years ago, and they've got a little meeting room in the retirement home there. They sold it, and they made a lot of money on the building they sold in Seattle. But they sold it to a church. It wasn't even to Microsoft or nobody. Anyway, they gave us a chunk of that money. We used half of it to build a clinic in this place. Partly because I feel like if people give us special money, that's part of, an endowment, or a person who dies and leaves us a bequest from their will. I feel like we need to do something special with that. Not that everything we do is not special, but something significant. And I was out in Seattle, spoke at that church 6 weeks ago, and I showed them this picture and told them that's what we use half your money for, a clinic for these girls. Teachers. We met the teachers there last year. Their salary, $50 a month. They said is that right? That almost seems too high. But I believe it is $50 a month. And they can barely buy a big sack of grain for that to make it through the month in the market. And so they're dispirited. They have a low retention rate. And the principal, if you miss school a day, he can't really call you to that. Because, you can split. You're not going to be out a lot of money. So we had part of our campaign this past fall was to raise money to increase teacher salaries by $25 a month, which they said would be a big morale boost. Who would have thought? It means a lot in a situation like that. So there's the teachers. We met last May, and I told them, I understand your situation. I can't promise anything because, you can't make promises you can't keep in situations like this. But fortunately, you all people came through for us. We raised the money in our fall campaign. I think it was $10,000 and something. This many teachers, $25 a month adds up. And these girls, we met these girls. They had all come from 200 miles away to get to this school, fleeing gender bias and military violence. They're getting scholarships from us now, thanks to your support and others. Anyway, that's Lona, Ayak, Adia, and Fahista. So Ayak, the second one from the left, she said, in my village, it was considered a waste of money to educate a girl. And that's because often, in South Sudan, the culture is when your daughter gets married, she lives with the husband's family. So you invested in her, but you don't get the return. Adia said, in my community, there was so much fighting, people were dropping like houseflies. And Fahista said, our parents hid us under the bed when the militias came near, trying to protect us. And then Lona, she said, the one on the left, she said, in my village, it was said to be an abomination, a serious religious sin to educate a girl. Now she's the top student in this whole state of South Sudan. I call that poetic justice. Women, microloan projects. This woman's got a little clothing shop going. I call this one the queen and her court. There you go. Also, there are women there who, come on, you can do it, who want to be farmers. There's a return refugees. They're used to working with the land and to get back on the land, but they had a big piece of land that they needed a tractor to work. We don't have a tractor. I think it was $6,000 or $8,000. I don't remember how much. I put that on the wish list. A woman in Claremont, California, I know through the Laverne Church of the Brethren, saw that on the wish list. She said, I learned to drive on a tractor. Maybe she grew up in Indiana. I learned to drive on a tractor. Here's the money for that tractor. So, you don't know till you ask. These women, tailoring training, this is all the stuff that we fund. We fund the leaders of the workshop. We fund the training materials. We fund the machines that they train on. And these women, there's like, I don't know, a dozen of them or something in this class. They come in the mornings and then work in the afternoon to make money to feed themselves. And it lasts for about 6 months, I think. We also, with our fall campaign, we raised money that it costs $150 to buy a treadle machine. I know some of you got them in your basement. We probably can't get them there from here. I'm just going to tell you, but thanks for the offer. I'm just preempting your offers. It cost $150. We came up with a plan. We'll put in 75 if they put in 75. So it's like, they've got some ownership of this. And so that's how that works. And so they're getting the machines to practice once they graduate. Beautician class, we got to look good. And the woman on the right, Marika, is one of the instructors. So I said to her, Marika, why are you doing this? A lot of these are single mothers. They're poor, they're returned refugees, tough life. I said, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this training? I thought, looking for some highfalutin answer, empower these women to meet the needs of these single mothers. No, she said, you get to look pretty and you make money. That's what she said. All right, we are getting near the end. Oh, this is great. Timing is everything. So there's our crew from Harrisonburg, Virginia, the Jubilee Carbon Farm. On the right are two JMU students. The next woman is Maria. She's a Guatemalan who sort of manages our gardens there. These foreigners, they're used to working with the land. They teach us a lot when they come to our farm. And we, share the goodness. In the middle is Tom, right there, kneeling there. Some of you know Tom Benevento. Samuel Lucito, who I mentioned during my sermon, the IVS volunteer through the Mennonites from Kenya. And we got the woman coming from Zambia later. I don't know who the next guy is. And on the left, Rufus Taylor. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. The son of James Taylor, working with us on our farm this summer. And now he's thinking about that as a career direction. I think Dad's trying to talk him out of it. I don't know why. But anyway, I just wanted to let you to meet Rufus Taylor. Yeah. All right, so go. Here we go. There we go. So we're working in the field. All the volunteers come and work in the fields. Again, carbon sequestering rather than carbon emitting, garden styles, doing agroforestry. We're also doing stream restoration. There's the before and after picture of the riparian buffer we put in. Oh, I wish Jerry was still here. You're not in here, are you, Jerry? The former retired guy from Manchester. I know he does a lot of stream work. Anyway, so campfire at night. I already told you about the campfire. We have campfires at night there, and there's their tent compound out there. And then up in Vermont, we have food justice gardens. 1 out of 3 Vermonters is food insecure. We have food justice gardens where we grow food to feed the community and rent out garden plots, or I don't think give out garden plots. Up at the top right, firewood security during the wintertime. Help people stay warm. We can recoup food. That's from go to the trash and Trader Joe's or someplace, and then you got the food line up for people coming in. I don't think I've got a picture of this, but we also had built a little free pantry. I guess you've got them in your community. I've been a little skeptical about little free pantries. I'm thinking it really doesn't deal with the deeper issues. You don't really know who's getting the food. But Pete, our director up there, said, there's some people, as any of us would, they have enough pride they don't want to get in the car line and be seen having to get food. And this gives them the option of anonymity. Coming and getting the food on their own schedule with nobody around, and then get some food that they need. This is Anna on the left. She was with us in Denali. That's her friend Olivia on the right. But Anna came with us because Olivia knew us. Anna didn't know us, but she came with us on a learning tour in August of 21. She saw enough of the climate change impacts that I got an email from her last year about this time and saying, being in Alaska changed my life. She changed her major at Virginia Tech to green engineering. And she was asking me in the email that she sent me, maybe you read this on the back of our newsletter, I think the spring newsletter, maybe I had this in there. She said, what do you got for me this summer? I need to do something purposeful relating to climate change. I don't want to be doing pizzas again this summer. So we took her to Vermont. There she is on the left with her Virginia Tech shirt on. Took her to Vermont. And then in Virginia too. And she participated there in the gardens, doing all the kind of stuff that we're doing in all those sites. She got to climb the highest mountain in Vermont. I mean, it ain't that high, but Vermont's got mountains. They're pretty nice, actually. And she also got to live in a yurt with a wood stove and a private bath. And this summer, she's volunteering at a big wind energy organization here somewhere in the United States. If we and you, if we can do a little something to launch some people on this path that is somewhere deep inside them, but they might not have even known was there. I'm not sure Anna knew it was there. It'll be a blessing to them, to our world, and to our churches. I'm going to tell you another kind of concluding story here. I know Anna, her church. She went to my high school, Lord Botetourt High School. We all want to say that 3 times in a row. Lord Botetourt High School in Southwest Virginia. She happened to have been a graduate from there because Olivia, her friend, was, and they went with us. Anyway, she also goes to the local Baptist church. I know that church. My cousin was the organist there for 40 years. I know they're very conservative. But I just asked, we had an exit interview with Anna after her summer last summer because I'd been involved in her life for a couple of stages, and I thought I'd like to hear what she thought about things. And I asked her at one point, how you feeling about your church? You're going to be attending there when you're back home. They're not talking about the things I care about. There's a window of opportunity for us. I don't think there's any more. I hope not. No, there's not. Questions or comments? Anyone?
Mike? Yeah. We are pretty much out of time, but there may be somebody who's been waiting for an opportunity to take at least one. Yeah. Go right ahead, Ruth. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And how would you advise us to respond to articles in, say, agricultural journals that say that it's good that the earth is greening as a result of extra CO2? What recommendations would you have for a response?
I was going to say that's going to come back on you one of these days. And things are growing more, but they have less nutrition. Things that are growing more, the plants they're finding, the research is showing that there's less nutritional punch per unit of produce that comes out of those things. So they're growing faster, but they're not as rich in terms of nutrient. That could be one thing. Also, that's going to migrate north. Eventually, that's going to migrate north. And that's going to be a problem. The climate change impacts and the greenness and all that stuff, it's going to migrate north. But that would be the scientific answer, would be that other piece that I just said with you. And plus, what else is climate going to do to everything else? I mean, to soil health. I mean, the heat can't be good for the things that are there, kind of enriching the soil. And also pollinators. What's it going to do to pollinators? They're moving. Half mile per butterfly per year. They're moving. And so, all these things, I think eventually they'll come back to haunt us. And we're also, as I said in my sermon, we're trying to involve the Mennonite and Brethren farmers in coming to visit. And we got one Mennonite guy. You get one Mennonite, the others, they're going to be lined up in their buggies behind them, So we got a Mennonite guy who wants to try some of the stuff on his land. And so if you get people doing stuff in the good way, and this is not really what you're talking about, but if you get some model farms doing it in the good way, then it can be an encouragement and spread, like the sparks we're talking about, to other farmers. So, but yeah, I hear the issue you're raising.
So we will have to call it quits, but just one closing word. David, you mentioned in your sermon the need for a spiritual and cultural transformation and the need for sparks to get fires going. We want to thank you for not just being a spark, but for being the kindling that encourages every one of us to do everything we can to act, to try to make that spiritual, cultural transformation a reality. So let's say thanks to David for all he's doing, all we're doing.
But I'm going to say to you that when I was in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at Bridgewater College, interesting organization that Well, we had an interesting group there too. But I remember one of the guys telling the story of building a fire. And if you got the sticks of kindling spread out too far apart, you're not going to have a fire. That kindling has got to be laid on top of each other. And that's what I feel like the reciprocal relationship. The organization like ours have with people like you, that we together are the ones who make this fire. So thank you. Thank you. So, sorry, no, this is me to you. This is me to you. Thank you very much.
And Jerry Sweeten is still here, right there. Raise your hand, Jerry.
Oh, you are here.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.